Hi everyone, I'm Niall O'Reilly. I'm the Head of Work and Wellbeing at South Yorkshire Housing Association. I just wanted to just take a second actually because it's always good for me to come back to Zest in particular. My dad lives just over the hill here, so we're kind of part of this community, and actually about a little more than 10 years ago now, when I struggled, when I came back from Ireland actually, when I was unemployed after a family circumstance, I came to Zest for help, to the job club. I volunteered in the Zest Centre. So when Matt says that they're transforming lives in the community, I know that's true because it happened for me. So do visit the Zest Centre, an amazing organisation. Okay, rattle through the slides. I'm the Head of Work and Wellbeing. We lead two contracts. One, we lead the Building Better Opportunities, the big lottery funded scheme, and have done for the last 2 years, which is an individual placement and support service. But I'm not here to talk about that today. I'm here to talk about Working Win. So we'll jump on to the next slide. There's a video here. I'm not going to make you sit through it, but essentially Working Win is a randomised controlled trial trying to reach 7,500 people across South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw. We have been delivering it for just over 6 months now, but we had our official launch back in August. There's Dan Jarvis there, and we also had Sarah Newton up. If we jump to the next slide, I'll rattle through them. These are the key facts about Working Win. For those of you who haven't heard about it, or you might have heard about it but heard of it in terms of the health-led employment trial. It's funding that's come to our region from the government's Work and Health Unit. So this is NHS England and the Department of Work and Pensions. It's trialling a modified version of individual placement support, which many of you will know about. But one of its modifications is it's not only trying to see whether you can help people with mild to moderate mental health conditions and physical health conditions into work, but also supporting people who are in work and struggling. So it's a large trial. We're one of only 2 areas of the country to receive this funding. As I said, we've just over that 6-month mark, and we've received over 2,500 referrals to date. It is a randomised control trial, and I will talk a little bit about the learning about that because it's the first time we've delivered a clinical trial, so there'll be some learning in that for us. But in essence, what that means is 50% of the people we meet for initial appointment receive our support, and 50% of people we signpost to other local services. And if people do receive our support, we're providing up to 12 months of strength-based coaching. I'll talk about the strength-based bit, and we also provide debt and benefits advice through a partnership with Sheffield Citizens Advice. There's a website for people who are interested in finding out more, and there's also the next slide will show you a referral website for those of you who might have some participants for us. These are the criteria, so these are kind of people that we're engaging. It's over the age of 18, living in, registered with the GP, more accurately in South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw. We are focusing on people with more mild to moderate mental health conditions, though our other service, Building Better Opportunities, does work with people with severe mental health conditions. And I've just come this morning from a community mental health team where we have people embedded. I think we could probably skip along from that one. Talk a bit about our approach. I think it echoes some of the things that Stuart says, but I suppose each of us will have our own particular approach. We try and base our approach on the evidence as we see it. So on both Building Better Opportunities and on Working Win, we're using individual placement and support. Many of you will be very familiar with IPS already, so I'm not going to tell you things that you already know, but for those of you who are not, everything that you could ever want to know about IPS you'll find on the Centre for Mental Health website, so do go and check that out. In essence, it's a place then train approach, so one that emphasises rapid entry into the workplace and then intensive support to stay there. There are a number of key principles around it, but as I say, you can find out everything that you would want to on the Centre for Mental Health. Our approach to employment support is, and it might be in common with other people in the room, is to focus on people's strengths, on their capabilities rather than their barriers. So, and that means everything from our initial appointments with we call them customers, you might say clients or service users, our paperwork, how we do our group supervisions, the way that we do our field mentoring. So everything that we're doing is trying to focus on people's strengths, when people are happiest at work, what assets they have in their life. We're not a big fan of some ways of labelling the people that we work with. Again, it's up to each of us, I suppose, to pick the words that we want, but complex needs, hard to reach, distant from the labour market, we don't find those labels particularly helpful. I wouldn't imagine that when I was unemployed and came here that I would have ever thought and described myself in any of those ways. So I'm about to write a LinkedIn blog. My kind of way of boring people on these topics is now via blogs, so I won't say any more on that. Final two bits that might be worth mentioning: we integrate with the health and employment system. We have occupational therapists and counsellors who work across our employment services, but we also co-locate with NHS services across our region. So through Working Win, we've got a physical presence with IEP services, increasing access to psychological therapies. We've got people in all of the IEP services across the Sheffield City region. We also have a physical presence with physio teams, MSK musculoskeletal physio teams, and we do some co-location with voluntary sector partners like Zest. And we've had a real mix across BBO. We've worked out of drug and alcohol services, troubled family teams and others. So if anyone's interested in chatting afterwards about experiences of that, more than happy. The final thing, and again, it's for each of us to make our own choices around this. All the support that we deliver is voluntary. We'll never deliver a contract that involves mandation. It's not something we believe in. We work very well with our colleagues at the DWP, particularly on Working Win, but that's a line in the sand for us. So, and if that means that my job becomes extinct because we don't win any more contracts, well, so be it. We're very, very clear that we'll never deliver a contract that isn't voluntary. I won't tell you too much about some of these stories, but there are links on all these slides. I'm sure they'll go around afterwards. Steve, a manager at Sainsbury's that we've been supporting, an in-work customer who was really struggling with his mental health, who's not only been able to sustain work, but has actually become a mentor for others, and has done a really good video, which I think you'll be able to find out through that link. Certainly you'll get to Steve's blog, where he talks about how you can be a good manager for people with mental health conditions. And that's gone on to, he's a manager at Sainsbury's, it's gone on to their Yammer, I believe it is, and been seen by the CEO. So allowing him, and hopefully you'll see this in the way that we tell our stories, allowing people to tell their own stories and in the way that that I would want my story told, I suppose, but as opposed to, here was this broken individual and we swooped in SYHA or Working Win and fixed them, but actually what's the reality of the story. And in this case, and in the other two I'll talk about, that we think Steve is the hero of this story, not us. Facebook comment, won't labour it, but I suppose just about how we do provide support in the workplace, and we're doing lots with employers. And the third one is, you won't be able to see it very much, but a gentleman called Graham who went on BBC Radio Sheffield talking about his experience of working with us. It's really powerful. I think the link will still work. So again, if anyone's interested, do check it out. I think it was really powerful stuff. So final couple of slides, because I thought this might be I was trying to think, how could I be helpful to you, or what would be interesting? And so I put, these are the couple of slides. What we've learned so far, certainly in delivering Working Win, this big clinical trial, is there is real demand out there. When we are getting large numbers of referrals from people with health conditions. Currently our split on Working Win is about 60% of the people that we're seeing are out of work and about 40% of the people that we're seeing are in work. But we are seeing real demand. I think probably I was involved, I suppose, more in the sector maybe about 10 years ago or more, when I was a little less actually, when I was involved in ESF contracts particularly, and I think since then that businesses are increasingly aware of workplace well-being. I think businesses are much more advanced on that agenda than they've ever been. We ran an event last week at the Advanced Manufacturing Park. We had, I think, 68 people booked in, and we had even more people attend. We were having to ferry tables in and chairs in, and I think 10 years ago we might have been struggling to fill half the room. So that's not to say that always translates into action. I just think that more and more businesses get it and are actually doing some really good work. Actually, we're not going in always with a business who just hasn't done anything, but actually a business that's done loads of good things and then now thinking, well, what next? So learning so far. We've invested quite a bit in technology. I won't bore you too much with the details, but not only that referral website, but lots of the integrations that go behind it, appointment booking systems and the like, and it's paid off. Whereas in many instances, particularly in my history, they were white elephants and often kind of abandoned after a couple of years, and our experience to date has been that investing in tech has helped us, and I hope it continues to as well. So again, just our experience. Probably the thing that, I don't know, for those of you who haven't delivered a clinical trial, it has been a learning curve for us, particularly delivering it on the kind of scale that we're looking to do. So 7,500 participants in a short window. A number of bits of learning there. How do you promote a trial rather than a service? We know how to promote a service, but actually if only 50% of people are going to get that service, how does your marketing and your comms, how does that work? Every word on a trial has to go past a research ethics panel as well. So there are some limitations in how you can promote that. I think there's been a learning curve. I think we're on the upward part of that learning curve, but there has been a learning curve about how do you promote a trial, not a service, because you can't sell the virtues of a service 50% of people won't get. Some learning also around the lead-in times for staff. So I suppose I'd be more used to mobilising staff quite quickly, but actually if those staff need to go on clinical research network training, if they need to get research passport, letters of access to work from an NHS site, that all of that has to be factored in and means maybe you're not able to be quite as agile as you would otherwise. And then the final bit of learning around an RCT, because I'm guessing that it will be a continued part of our future, is that it divides people, it divides staff, our own staff sometimes who have different experiences about what that means, and even surprisingly enough, clinical staff as well. Don't think just because it's an RCT that necessarily all clinical staff will be bought into the idea of an RCT, and that's been useful learning for us. Early signs on outcomes are looking very encouraging. It's a trial, so we're still at the early days, but we believe the jobs are there and the good jobs are there, and I'm confident in terms of our outcomes that we'll get where we need to be. So final slide, I think, from me, how we might be able to work together, and obviously I don't know is the honest answer to that, but I'm happy to stay behind afterwards and figure it out. We are looking for referrals, so if there is anyone in the room who thinks they do have referrals that you'd like to send our way, then yeah, please do stop and chat. From particularly across South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw, and obviously we're place-based, so that's the only area, the Sheffield City region is the only area that we will work. We're a place then train model, so that means that the train part of it, I think we want to have partnerships with training providers, and we're perhaps so busy that we might not always see the connection, so please do approach us. We're happy to always share our learning and experiences. I've tried to be as kind of open as I can, but I think I suppose my experience in life has been that the PowerPoint version doesn't always match up with the reality on the ground. So if people want to just an honest catch up over a coffee and say, how's this really working? We're fairly transparent in that way. And please do approach us if you have an idea for a partnership working. Sometimes you're so busy in the doing that you don't always see the connections and the opportunities to collaborate and connect up.